Welcome back to the First Gnostic Church of Christ. We are reading the Gospel of Thomas, and we are now on video number 6, verse number 51. We left off in the last video with Christ providing evidence of our godly nature. He says to the disciples, if they say to you, where have you come from? Say to them, we have come from the light, from the place where the light came into being by itself, established itself, and appeared in their image. This is very important for you to understand that you are a children of God and therefore are godly. Your last name is God. So take your first name and exchange your last name for Christ or God. You are a son and daughter of God. Therefore you take up on the last name of God. If they say to you, is it you? Say, we are its children and we are the chosen of the living Father. If they ask you, what is the evidence of your Father in you? Say to them, it is motion and rest. And I pointed out that motion is the evidence of all things in the universe. What is that thing that moves everyone? That's the Spirit. It is the Spirit that also brings rest, meaning peace. One of our scribers on the First Gnostic Church of Christ has succinctly put this into one word, which I happen to agree with, and I think it was very well said, and that one word is free will. So essentially the Father is telling us that we have the free will to stay here in the Kenoma, or to go back to the Pleroma. This is what Christ is introducing to his apostles and those that are listening to him. While Christ is embodied in the flesh, as a flesh man in the Spirit, he is offering to the apostles an opportunity to come back with him. He's also letting everyone else have the opportunity to come back with him to the Last Supper. But you'll find out as we read through the upcoming verses that most everyone turn him away, and we'll find out why that is. Now I'm going to be showing a very small clip of a video in this reading and commentary, but if you are faint of heart, I suggest you not watch the video, as it is somewhat gory. But I'm not going to play the entire video, so you only have to watch a part of it, and I'll try to take out the worst parts of it. And I'm doing this not to be sensationalistic, but to drive home why Christ says some of the things he says in the upcoming verses, and why they may appear to be cruel and unusual if we don't put it in true context of what he's trying to say to those listening. So let's pick up. We're on verse number 51, and he continues this stream of thought about trying to convey the power within every one of us, that we are rightful sons and daughters of God, and we are worthy to receive the good news that we are saved from the Kenoma, if we but accept Gnosis and have the understanding to find completion and fullness of our spirit, to find our name, to go back to the Pleroma. And he says here in verse 51, his disciples said to him, when will the rest for the dead take place? And of course, here the disciples are catching on to this idea that Christ calls those living in this world dead. So he's not referring to the dead in the grave. The disciples are referring to what Christ has continually suggested, that most everyone on this planet are walking dead. And so the disciples continue in that stream of thought that Christ has set forth. When will this peace or this rest for the dead take place? And when will the new world come? Now, why would the disciples or the apostles bring forth this idea of the new world? Had Christ talked about it before? So far, up to this point, at least in the gospel according to Thomas, this concept of a new world has not yet been brought up. So why would they deduce or assume that Christ is talking about a new world that's to come? This has to do with the mythology that the Jewish at the time put stock in, this idea of a Messiah that would come, bring about rulership, and bring in a new world on this earth. This is what they're projecting onto what Christ is saying, superimposing their own mythology onto what Christ is saying. So understand that this is not what Christ is saying. This is what the disciples are misinterpreting about what the Christ is saying. And so Christ answers and says to them, what you are looking forward to has come, but you don't know it. Christ is saying that this thing you call the new world that you're waiting for, this Messiah, is here already. Not only am I the Messiah, the Christ, but I'm also the embodiment of the Pleroma. And I'm here to tell you, so are you. That kingdom of God that you're waiting for, that new world, has always been. It was even before the Kenoma, the Matrix, the flesh realm, the world of the Demi-Urge. That's why he always talks about, before this world was, I was. And continues on 52, his disciples said to him, 24 prophets have spoken in Israel, and they all spoke of you. Of course, they're continuing this theme about he's supposed to be the Messiah. He's supposed to be the new king of Israel. He's supposed to come in with a white horse and a sword, flaming sword, and take over earth and set up the new kingdom on earth. So this is what their mind is still stuck on, this idea that what the prophets were talking about is supposed to be done in the flesh realm. And he said to them, you have disregarded the living one who is in your presence and have spoken of the dead. He's saying to them that that spirit is already here. The Christ is here, has always been here, but you've disregarded it. It's in your presence, always has been. And you've always been following after ideas that only perpetuate death, not life. So the disciples were still stuck on this idea that the Messiah would come in and take over the earth and make the Jewish people the kings and queens of the planet. And of course, that is the machinations of the Demi-Urge and his minions that want to set that forth, so that there's continual control. 53. His disciples said to him, is circumcision useful or not? Now, why would they ask this? Why is this so important? The reason it's important is because one of the ways the Demi-Urge set aside the Jewish people, men in particular, from the Gentiles was to require that the newborn be circumcised. So this is a distinction between the Gentiles and the Jewish, or the Hebrews of the time. This is the way in which it was a type of mark that the Demi-Urge and his minions could recognize who is Jewish or Hebrew and who is not. So again, they're still stuck on this idea. Are you saying that this God that we've been following and what he commands us to do is not useful? Are you trying to tell us that do away with this unnecessary part of genetics? See, the male sex organ is the genetic apparatus that carries on reincarnation and karma and Genesis. And this is where the Hebrew race started, in Genesis. And so they want to carry this forth. So circumcision is very important. In fact, it's central. It's a central ceremony. It's called the ceremony when the male turns 12, he has a bar mitzvah. Of course, he's circumcised prior to that as a baby, but the bar mitzvah is a celebration and he's become a male. So you see that this process of maturation that centers around the sex organ of the male, phallic worship, is very Judean. And this is the whole idea, genetics, and it's, of course, patriarchal. And so the mind is stuck on this. Are you actually trying to make this idea that we don't have this dominance? Israel was considered the male attribute or the male qualities of assertiveness and aggression and conquering and dominion. This is what this all comes down to, you see. This is why they followed this up with circumcision. He said to them, if it were useful, their father would produce children already circumcised from their mother. Whoa, that's just intense. Christ is telling them, look how illogical your behaviors are. Look at your rituals. They're just illogical. Can show you already that who you call your God that requires you to do this has no power over you. Otherwise, this so-called father, and notice it's written here in a lowercase father, and all the fathers that follow after the Demi-Urge. He said that if this Demi-Urge were so powerful, then he would not have created you with the foreskin. So, of course, it's not useful. Why would it be necessary? Rather, the true circumcision in spirit has become profitable in every respect. So this is interesting because notice it says the true circumcision has become profitable. Why is that? Christ is saying this because prior to that, his visitation on earth, it was not profitable because no one knew of the Christ. And now that Christ is here, he's saying that I'm offering you a circumcision in the spirit, which is essentially to extract the flesh body or the material self and the soul body from the spirit. The spirit is liberated. That is what has become profitable in every respect. Verse 54, Jesus said, congratulations to the poor, for to you belongs heaven's kingdom. What is he talking about here? Is he talking about actual poor people? We could argue a lot of poor people are poor because they make bad choices. They have not so good critical thinking skills. Why do they get to belong to the heaven's kingdom? Again, like all things, you have to keep this in context. This is the problem with taking the Bible literally. You can see already nearly 80 to 90% of each one of these verses already, these sayings, are symbolic or allegorical or parables. Why would you therefore assume that any one of these verses are literal? Of course, Christ is talking about something that's a metaphor, but he is continuing in his stream of thought. What did he talk about before? He talked about doing away with the flesh body, material body. He's saying that he that is poor of the flesh body, in other words, that's not where you put your riches. You don't put your riches in this world. You don't put your riches in material things. This is what it means to be poor, is the person that doesn't have material things. But in Christ, he's not talking about literally having it as in possessing it, but he's talking about it in the sense that that's not where your attachments are. Your attachments is not to material things, for to you belongs heaven's kingdom. Now here is a verse that may seem very difficult to accept. And here's where I'm going to bring this video in, so you'll understand. Now, before I read verse 55, I want you to remember to keep this in context and continue the stream of thought that Christ is talking about. He's talking about the material world. He's talking about this idea of the fathers and mothers of this world and their children that have been produced without circumcision. So here he says, father would produce children already circumcised from their mother. So you have to keep this in context. Verse 33 already introduces the idea of these fathers that produce children circumcised. And then he talks about not to love the material realm. This is what he's doing. He's setting it up so that you will understand. But he's also introducing things in a way that really may shock a lot of people because they're not meant to hear. They don't have gnosis, so they don't understand these parables. They're going to take it on face value. He's giving you examples of why you cannot take these sayings or these scriptures literally. He's setting this forth because he's setting the world ablaze. And remember, fire is the element that symbolically represents purifying. And so Christ is throwing in a firebomb right in the midst of the crowd. And many of people will be repulsed and they'll scatter. But the few that hear have the gnosis, because what he's getting ready to do from verse 55 forward is more astounding. So here it is. Jesus said, whoever does not hate father and mother cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not hate brothers and sisters and carry the cross as I do will not be worthy of me. That sounds heavy, doesn't it? It sounds like Christ is literally telling you to hate your own family. Is this what he's saying? Now, did Christ here say, whoever does not hate his father and mother? No, he didn't. He didn't say whoever hates his father and mother. He said, whoever does not hate father and mother. Now, let's back up. Let's keep it in context. What does the father and mother represent? It represents this world that we live in, the genetic process. This is what it represents. When we're in the pleroma, there is no impregnation and the pain of labor and growing old and teeth falling out and dying and the recycling and the rebirth and the recycling and the rebirth. This is what Christ is talking about here. But I'm going to go ahead and take us over to canonical text, to the book of Luke, so that we can get a little more meat around this, because this is paralleling a verse that is present in Luke. And here I'm reading from Luke chapter 14. He's already offered to his apostles Last Supper. What he's literally doing, they do not recognize this. Christ is literally an opportunity to his apostles to return with him to the pleroma at that very moment, at the Last Supper. But no one accepts. James was the one that came the closest going with Jesus, but he didn't accept, even James. And Christ then admonished us to follow after James, correct? We'll start with verse 16. But before we do that, I also was going to say that not only is he already invited his apostles, but now he's going to give a sort of last call to everyone. He's going to open up to all those that are listening to him, to invite them to the Last Supper. So he's giving an opportunity for humans at that point that he's walking on earth to come back with him. But of course, when he leaves, nobody goes with him. But he's going to open the opportunity to not only his apostles, but to everyone. And this is what he does. He says, and when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. And this is verse 15. Chapter 14, Luke, verse 15. So he's talking here about those that eat with the Christ, or take of the Christ, shall be eating the bread in the kingdom. Then said he unto them, a certain man made a great supper, and bade many. He offered many to come to this great supper. And has sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, come, for all things are now ready. In other words, I'm ready to take you back with me. Verse 18. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yokes of oxen, and I go to prove them. I pray thee have me excused. And another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and showed his lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor, and maimed, and the halt, and the blind. And the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. So here again, this is referring back to the earlier verse that talked about, blessed is the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Those that don't have material things are more likely to get into the kingdom of heaven, because they're less likely to have attachments, I'll say that, than the rich, or things they have to give away, correct? This is what Christ is saying. Not all poor, but they're more likely to, you see. And 22, and the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. So even after he invited others beyond the apostles, there still was room. Verse 23, And the Lord said unto the servant, Go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. Verse 24, For I say unto you, that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. He's saying even among the poor, none of those are ready. Verse 25, And there went great multitudes with him, and he turned and said unto them, verse 26, If any man come to me, and hate not his father, and mother, and wife, and children, and brethren, and sisters, yea, his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Verse 27, And whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. All right, so that's what he's saying. He's saying that if you're going to come with me, you're going to have to leave behind your family. So when he's talking about hate here, he's not talking about as in having some malice intent or bitterness toward your family or your wife or your father or your mother, your children. What he's talking about is even the attachments that you have to those you love cannot be compared to your desire to go with the Christ. He's just warning them. He's trying to essentially weed out the people that are really ready. He doesn't want those that want to continue in this realm, to be with their mothers, their fathers, their wives, their children, their brethren, their sisters to go with him. Otherwise, that'd be very cruel. So he's setting forth a kind of bomb. He's setting off a bomb to really get a reaction so that many will be repulsed by the idea. And those that really hear what he's saying, he knows that they understand this realm, the realm of suffering. And this is where I'm going to bring in just this piece of the video. And I'm sure you know this already and you've seen similar videos, but trying to drive this home so we don't forget. So I'm just going to play a little clip of this. Here we have a situation that is very indicative of the nature of this realm. Okay, I'm not going to play the entire video, but essentially what you see there, of course, is a giraffe and its baby, a newborn baby, and the lion attacks the baby. The mother tries to defend the baby, but of course the baby doesn't survive, is too injured, and essentially becomes a meal for the lion. But in fact, it goes further. The lions are not happy with just taking the baby. The lion then, a pack of lions chase the mother, and she struggles. They jump on her back. Nearly 5-10 minutes of excruciating pain and suffering that she endures. Not only has she suffered in her heart from losing her baby, but she's being taken down. She finally collapses on the ground, and she loses her life, and she dies. This is the realm that Christ is talking about hating. This is the realm of recycling. There is something diseased and broken and cruel about this realm. And anyone with a little bit of understanding knows this. A young child knows this. And anyone that keeps the childlike spirit never loses the understanding of the cruelty of nature that we glorify. Many people glorify nature, how awesome it is, right? But yet, it's filled with blood and suffering and death. And no matter how this giraffe mother may want to survive, and maybe even within its being, it has some desire to really want to live and pray out to some type of God, it won't matter. Its child will be taken, and then its own life will be taken. And this is the nature of this realm. Now again, I'm not doing this to create sensationalism or a shock value, but a reminder that if you think what Christ is saying in verse 55 is cruel, then you may want to reconsider. Christ is talking about this realm. And how do I have proof of that? Because verse 56 shows that. And I showed you Luke as well, and why he set forth such harsh words, because he didn't want to bring those that were not ready to come with him. But furthermore, verse 56 drives us home and shows. It says, Jesus said, Whoever has come to know the world has discovered a carcass. And whoever has discovered a carcass of that person, the world is not worthy. Do you understand what Christ is saying there? He's saying something that most people want to ignore. Everybody's trying so hard to make sense of this world, to make it, oh, it's good, just pass it off. Well, it's just nature. It's just natural. Why is that acceptable? Anyone with a conscience would be moved by witnessing that giraffe baby being taken down with his mother watching. And then the greed goes further. The baby's not enough. You have to go after the mother as well. And she struggles and suffering and pain. This is the crying of the universe. This is what in Revelation talks about. The angels are feeling sorry for those on this planet. So that's what he's talking about. He's saying that when you finally understand the essence of this universe, you'll understand that it is not even worthy of you being here. Why would you stay in this kind of place? And it sounds nice where you are. You're listening to me on this computer. You've got this house that you're living in, or the apartment, wherever. You've got the warmth. You've got food in the grocery store. These are all artificial. These are the things that humans constructed to hide away the truth of what really is happening. Do you think that you would be able to survive in the forest for more than 1 or 2, 3 days? Might be a handful of you might be able to. We are very, very precariously vulnerable. Even if the human race were to excel, there'll be asteroids, the sun will implode, so forth and so on. But anyway, this is what Christ is saying. This is a very profound saying. Whoever has come to know the world has discovered a carcass. This is the world of the dead. How many times can Christ say it to you? Most people are zombies. It's like vultures feeding off the dead flesh and flies swarming around. This is the stench of this universe that you're in. That's what Christ is telling you. And whoever has discovered that stench of that person, this world is not worthy. And that person understands this world's not worthy because something more lofty inside of them is telling them something is sick about this realm. Something sick and twisted. It's like a horror film going on all the time. And thousands of animals are dying all the time. And it's not just animals, millions every day, but it's also humans killing humans, bombs being dropped. This is what this realm is. And this is the outcome of the Demi-Urge and his minions, you see. So I'll continue. Verse 57. Jesus said, the Father's kingdom is like a person who has good seed. His enemy came during the night and sowed weeds among the good seed. The person did not let the workers pull up the weeds, but said to them, no, otherwise you might go to pull up the weeds and pull up the wheat along with them. For on the day of the harvest, the weeds will be conspicuous and will be pulled up and burned. What is Christ saying here? He's saying that most of you aren't ready. I'm not going to take you with me, because if I do, I will take you prematurely. You see that? He's telling them that the weeds are around you and you don't recognize it. You don't see them fully grown for what they are, because your spirit is also not fully grown. The season's not right. Time is yet. He's literally saying it in front of their eyes. And many people are like, where's the new world? When are you going to take us to the kingdom? And Christ is literally telling them, I'm not. Vast majority are not going. In fact, probably none of you are going. But he, of course, is not going to say that to them because they wouldn't be able to handle that. You see, Christ knows that his message has to be carried on. Verse 58, Jesus says, congratulations to the person who has toiled and has found life. What does it mean? To toil means you recognize the heartache and long suffering of this world. You see it for what it is. You see that it is filled with toil. That's what you see. And by recognizing that, you know you have toiled and others have toiled. And when you reach that state, that realization, something's not right with this realm. It's a place of toil and desolation and suffering and a carcass and a stench. That's when you wake up. You're like, oh, I get it. This can't be all there is. Verse 59, Jesus said, look to the living one as long as you live. Otherwise, you might die and then try to see the living one, and you will be unable to see. Christ is saying to them, I'm here now. I'm going. Follow me. It's your last chance. Otherwise, you might die and then try to see the living one, and you will be unable to see. In other words, you'll go back to sleep. Your gnosis will go back to dormancy, and you won't remember. Come with me while you remember about the pleroma, about your origins, about everything I'm telling you. The true Father, where you really came from, the real story. You're trapped in this matrix. You're trapped in a lie. Come with me. Escape while you can, because when I go, you may forget again. Verse 60. He saw a Samaritan carrying a lamb and going to Judah. He said to his disciples, that person around the lamb? They said to him, so that he may kill it and eat it. He said to them, he will not eat it while it is alive, but only after he has killed it and it has become a carcass. They said, otherwise he cannot do it. They're saying, well, of course, he's not going to eat this lamb live. They have to kill it first and then eat it. What are you trying to say to us, Jesus? He said to them, so also with you, seek for yourselves a place for rest, or you might become a carcass and be eaten. So you see how many times he gives them an opportunity? He's saying that, come with me now before you become meat of this earth. You get eaten. You don't have to die to live, is what he's saying. Just like here, he's saying the lamb has to die in order that you live. You don't have to live through death in order to have life. That's a creation of the Demi-Urge. He's the aeon of death. He's the aeon of evil. He's the aeon of division, the aeon of evil. You see, the aeon of good and evil. That's a machination and creation of the Demi-Urge, not the true Father. And he bringing forth also that this idea that the Lamb has to suffer. So he's talking also about himself. So Christ is just talking on so many levels. It's astounding. So he's given metaphors about his walk to the cross. He's the Lamb, right? He's also going to go to the cross. So this is what he's saying. He's saying that go with me now before the Lamb dies. So also you seek for yourself a place for rest, a place for peace to go to the pleroma, or you might become a carcass and be eaten. And see, this is what Gnosis is. It's to offer you the opportunity to discover the carcass that the world is, so that you understand that the world has told you you're unworthy, when in fact the world is unworthy of you. And you have got to get that in you. That's what Gnosis is, to understand this is an illusion. This is not the real world. Now, before I go, I want to tell you that I know some of you, because I suffered this as well. When I first had Gnosis, some of you may walk into Gnosis, becoming so disenchanted with this world that you lose desire to continue. Some of you may experience depression. So I want to remind you that Christ has come to bring abundance. Christ has come to bring joy and grace and happiness. And in order for you to leave this pleroma, you have to love yourself. And if you don't love yourself, then that means that you have not truly detached, because this kingdom of God is in you. And so you have to love the kingdom of God. You have to love God with all your heart and all your mind and everyone else. So you can't hate this world to the point that you hate yourself, because this world and you are not the same thing. And your brothers and sisters are not the same thing either. The mechanisms of this world, the movement of this world, and the lack of rest in this world, the toiling, that is this realm. You see, the peace and the spirit moving, that's you. So Christ is telling you to hate the flesh aspect of the mother, father, and brother, sister, not their spirits, that we are all of a unit. We're all together in one voice. That's the part that you learn to love. And so I'm saying to you that you have to understand the beauty that is in this universe as well. You can't have an unbalanced understanding of what truth is. The truth is, yes, this realm is evil, but it's also the realm of good. Remember, it's the realm of good and evil. Remember, it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, not the knowledge of evil only. And in order for you to partake of the Christ, you must also partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. Can't just be one or the other. It has to be both. So this is something you'll have to work through. You'll have to work through understanding how to see good and evil and be able to carry them both without being swayed one way or the other and being tricked into thinking this realm is wonderful or just completely evil. So it's the realm of good and evil, but the pleroma is a realm of only good. So you have every reason to work toward good, because when you become good, then you're received into goodness. That's how it works. And you'll have to become good not only to those around you, but also to the God within you, which means to be good to yourself. So you can't have despair about yourself or hate of yourself. You can certainly have those emotions. We all have them, ups and downs. But to hate yourself to the point you want to take your life or have no purpose to continue, you have a mission here to find your name. And this is what we're going to pick up on as we get into verse 61 and so forth, because certainly the disciples are thinking just like that. Well, you're telling us to go and to hate this place, and now I feel really depressed. Christ knows this, and so certainly he's going to follow that up. He's going to say, okay, I understand that, and let me tell you why you're here and why some of you want to stay here. And we talked about this already in the Gospel of Truth. Most of us are not ready, because most of us are still have attachments. We still have to fill up we still have old wine, you see, and we still have to find the fullness of our name. And that's fine. There's no judgment here. Christ is not judging anyone. He's just telling you. He's giving you an opportunity. He's enlightening you. He's giving you gnosis, so you understand how things are. And that's the beginning of the path, right? And that's what you have to do. You have to start that walk. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. And thanks as always for listening, and we'll pick up in video number 7, starting on verse number 61. Blessed day.